We're now going to hear from Lorna Crozier. Lorna is the author of the memoir Through the Garden, which was named a Globe and Mail Top 100 book and a finalist for the Hillary Weston Trust Prize for Nonfiction and the City of Victoria Butler Book Prize. What was the term? A variety of prizes. She has published 18 books of poetry, including God of Shadows, What the Soul Doesn't Want, The Wrong Cat, Small Mechanics, The Blue Hour of the Day, which is a selected poems, Whetstone, and the brand new After That, which has just come out with McClellan and Stewart and is available at the back. She's also the author of the memoir Small Beneath the Sky, which won the Hubert Evans Award for Creative Nonfiction. She won the Governor General's Literary Award for Poetry for Inventing the Hawk, and 3 additional collections were finalists for that award. She's received the Canadian Authors Association Award, 3 Pat Lowther Memorial Awards, the Raymond Schuster Award, and the Dorothy Livesay Poetry Prize. She was awarded the BC Lieutenant Governor's Award for Literary Excellence, the George Woodcock Lifetime Achievement Award, and the Kloppenberg Award for Literary Excellence. She's a professor emerita at the University of Victoria and an officer of the Order of Canada, and she has received 5 honorary doctorates for her contribution to Canadian literature. I feel like we should be presenting you with something big and shiny and hang around your neck, but we're not. But we're very happy to be hearing from you. Born in Swift Current, Saskatchewan, she now lives here in British Columbia. We're so lucky to be able to hear from Lorna today.
Thank you. It's great to be here, and especially to share the stage with my friend Daryl. I don't know if Rob knows this yet, but I always say yes whenever he asks me to do anything. It means my life is going to be interesting, isn't it? Ask me again, Rob, to do something. I feel like this is shooting me in the forehead or something.
Oh, it didn't fail?
It's just, it's kind of in the way. Thank you. That's great. Yeah, that's better. So I've taken a bit of a different angle than Daryl, and I kind of wrote this the way you might write a poem, because I find it very hard to stick to the timeline. If I were just trusted to talk, I would talk too much. A certified comedian, I got to talk more to you about that. I want to be a certified comedian, maybe. My late husband, Patrick Lane, and I reached a place of wisdom the last few years of his life. And when his 2 adult sons would call us and ask for advice of some kind, our response would be, "Don't ask us, we know nothing." When you say something like that, your grown-up offspring might think you're addled, and those who admire you even a little bit might be disappointed, but it's kind of a thrill, especially in your mid-70s, to admit that you dwell in uncertainty, that the questions remain unanswered, that you've stubbornly been mostly unteachable most of your life. Given my state of ignorance, I thought for this short address tonight, I would try to cobble together the few things I do think I know about poetry in my 50 years of working with words. And if after listening you say to yourself at the end, well, she still knows nothing, that's okay. I've divided my presentation into what I call 5 stanzas, and I'm going to conclude each of those stanzas with a poem, because I think it's always good to mix poetry into things whenever you have the chance to do so. And they're from the book that Rob mentioned after that. So stanza 1. Silence is the mother of poetry. Unless it's a great epic like the Iliad or the Divine Comedy, poetry takes up as little room as possible, often stopping before the end of the page and leaving a wordless gap. Poems are embedded in silence, the lines juddering to a halt before they reach the right margin, allowing the blankness on that side of the page to be part of the meaning. As well, each stanza rests on a cloud of emptiness before the next stanza begins. In a poem, There's always the sense that one word or phrase exists at the expense of dozens of others abandoned along the way. That struggle into utterance is a reminder that language, for all of its beauty as practiced by Susan Musgrave or Gwendolyn McEwen or Richard Wagamese, falls short. There is a phrase out there, a word or two that could hold the feeling that hovers on the other side of language, but those words or phrases don't step from the shadows onto the page. I do believe they're there though, and someday maybe I will find them. Is that what keeps me writing? Perhaps every poem should be called Out of Silence, These Few Words, or Back to Silence, These Few Words. It makes me think of Shakespeare's conclusion to The Tempest. We are such stuff as dreams are made on, and our little life is rounded with a sleep. It is this wordless, eternal sleep that poems allude to in their succinctness, in their small utterances. The poems choose, out of the daily noise, just these few sounds to leave behind. From field notes to silence. Is it possible for hands to lose their language, their alphabets of finger and thumb? The axe heard them, the handle of the spade, the wrench, the washing hung on the line, the woman's naked shoulder and hip heard them. Now the palms and digits speak to nothing, to no one. They palsy, they mumble, they dumb down. Such a loss to the axe, to the spade, the wrench, such a loss to the woman curled on one side of the bed, clothespin in her mouth. Stanza 2. If you're a poet, most people won't understand what you do. I'm never sure to lie or tell the truth when people ask me what I do. A couple of days ago, the woman who was standing next to me in my gym class said, "I hear you're a writer. What do you write?" "Mostly poetry," I replied. "Boy, you must have a big vocabulary," she said. Then, like so many others, she followed that up with, "Of course I never read poetry." What should my response be to things like that? I don't either, I just write it. Another question that often follows someone discovering that I'm a writer is, should I know you? That leaves me flummoxed. If you can figure out an answer to that, please tell me at the end of this. During COVID, I began a walk every morning with 3 people in my neighborhood who'd been strangers until that time. 2 were a married couple, the other was a widower named Merv. He met me in the parking lot across from my house every morning at 8 a.m. and we walked together alone for about half an hour before joining the other 2 down the block. Unfortunately, out of curiosity, Merv Googled me and discovered what I do. The owner of 5 motorcycles, a former Navy guy, a retired fish and game officer, Merv's a reader, but non-fiction only, he said. He doesn't bother with novels because they're made up. They don't tell the truth. He doesn't read poetry, he felt compelled to tell me, except for Robert's service. I don't write like that, I said, and added there are many kinds of poetry. When he Googled again after he got home, not my name this time, but the word poetry, one entry listed 7 types, and the next day on our walk he asked me which one I wrote. What did they include? Sonnet, something called haiku? He couldn't remember the rest. Was free verse listed? Yes, but he didn't understand what it was. Merv's a bright guy, so I put on my teacher's hat, and without getting too technical or nerdy, I tried to explain the difference as best I could between free verse and Robert Service. In other words, he said, the difference between something that's a poem and something that's not. I wonder what he would have thought if I stopped in my tracks and read him a poem from this book. He knew about loss after all, because his beloved wife of 50 years had died just 2 years before Patrick. Free verse poem for Merv. Let there be angels. William Blake heard angels singing. I wonder what you heard at the end. The trauma doctor said, talk to him if you want, he can hear you. This was before he turned off the machine. I talked to you between kisses. I kissed your mouth, your eyes, lowered the sheet and kissed your chest and belly. I took your long feet in my hands and kissed your toes and the pale soles mapped with where you walked for almost 80 years. I took the palms of your hands and laid them on me the last time they would touch me. I held each hand between mine. I held each hand between mine the way I'd hold a broken bird. I talked. I didn't say anything that would surprise you, but my mouth was busy. Maybe you weren't pleased. You wanted more. In times that mattered, we always tried to say something the other didn't know. Is the mic okay? Stanza 3. If the heart could write, it would write poetry. If the soul could write, it would write poetry. Even if a poem seems to be about a shoe, a bobby pin, a steel-toed boot, it doesn't just sit on the surface. It sends a taproot down to the stream that runs deep underground. It sips from that primal flow where myths and stories, ancient riddles, and the bones of our ancestors add their salt and minerals to that dark water. The words shiver with the cold of having tasted the mysterious, the wild, the hidden. The poet isn't conscious of that. She thinks she is writing about a shoe, a bobby pin, a steel-toed boot. She thinks she is writing about snow. Snow. Snow doesn't know time. It falls for minutes, for hours, it falls for days. Imagine snow instead of sand inside an hourglass. Time passing would not be gravity and measure, but a silent melt. Perhaps that's more accurate. Time as melt, and nothing to show in the end, but moisture on the glass. As when a woman stands in an unlit room and looks outside for someone who won't come back, her breath a small circle on the window pane. She draws a streak across it with her finger to touch a breath, to watch it disappear. Stanza 4. But what does this poem mean? A week or so after Merv's and my conversation about free verse, his late wife's best friend, who knew my work, bought him one of my books when he told her we walked together. Oh no, I thought. He couldn't remember the title, he said, but it was long and there was some kind of bird face on the cover. He tried to read the book, he continued, but he couldn't make head nor tail of it. Yesterday, a plumber came to fix his hot water tank. He passed them the book and said, "Here, read just this page and tell me what you make of it." The guy replied, "What's this?" Then, after he'd spent a few minutes reading the poem, "I don't get it." For emphasis, Mirth paused on the path, turned to face me, and asked, "Why would you spend all your life writing what 99% of people don't understand and don't want to read?" Why, indeed. A poem's obscurity, its desire to confuse the reader, is news to the poet. I don't want my poems to be as simple and straightforward as a Hallmark greeting card, but they don't attempt to pull the wool of language over anybody's eyes. Poems do say what they mean. They are what they mean. They exist not to obfuscate, but to connect with another human being, to say something that matters, even if 99.9% of people don't want to read them. Parcel. In the bag I carry from the crematorium, you weigh more than the heart of a horse. How do I know how much that is? I don't. But I say to myself, you weigh more than the heart of a horse. And the last stanza 5. Poetry doesn't heal the writer, but when my husband fell ill with a disease 7 specialists couldn't diagnose, I didn't know how I was going to deal with it. The only way I could survive was to go into my room and write, as I had done in the past when the world didn't make sense and I was troubled. Over the course of his 3-year illness, I filled the pages with my love for him, my concerns, and the story of our time together, including our companionship with 5 cats. That writing became the book, Through the Garden, a love story with cats. It came out in 2020, a year after he died. Interviewed about the book, I was often asked if the writing was a consolation. No, I replied. Nothing could soften the blow of that loss. Book or not, I was numb after Patrick's death. I had trouble getting out of bed, the world shrunken by his absence. If there was any consolation, I came to decide, it was the discovery that the 26 letters of the alphabet that I learned in grade 1 could be called into service once again. They could utter even this, the deepest sorrow I had ever had to hold in my heart. After the memoir came out, I began a series of poems which make up the book I was dipping in and out of tonight. One cluster of poems lists a variety of ways to survive the death of the beloved. They start at 7 tactics and shrink to 1, and I will read just a couple. Starting with 7. 7 ways to keep on going. Take on another language, an alphabet of bone and sinew and grit. Chew the gristle and learn by heart the songbird's oldest songs before you try to speak his name. Draw his feet, long and elegant, the shape of them like slim trout. Take extra time with the toes you took into your mouth. Find the word that means the sky after a swan has flown through, a mute swan with wide white wings. The noun has been lost because too many fluent in this grasslands dialect, when they look up, see only emptiness. Remember everything. No, don't do that. The hawk and owl feathers he found in the fields and kept in a jar on his desk, glue them to the hollow near your shoulder blades where you once had wings. You can wear his leather jacket then, and it won't look big. Observe the ways of insects. An ant uses the body of another ant to build a bridge over the gap between the planks on the deck so he can get to where he needs to go. Sleep on both sides of the bed. Confuse the cat. 2 ways to keep on going. Soon it will be over. Find the herb that grows on stone and brew it for a tea. It will make your heart turn hard. Watch how water falls without breaking. Watch how snow falls without breaking. Watch how your cut hair falls to the floor and you lift your head. Your friends say how young you look. Look how light falls upon you and doesn't break. I've heard from many who got in touch with me by email that Through the Garden and these poems have been of help to them. A writer can be given nothing better. Not awards, not advances, not scholarly dissertations. The magic of writing, its gift, is its connection with the reader. It may clarify, elucidate, surprise, destabilize, share a story that hasn't been privileged before by literature, confirm a feeling that resisted self-expression, and in doing so, most importantly, it may make a reader feel less alone. I get that from turning the pages of another's book. I don't get that from writing my own. What I do get is another kind of blessing. To enter into a poem, you have to pay such close attention to the things and creatures of the world that you live charged, transfixed. The borders of your skin blur, and you become linked in that act of creation with what you bring to the page. Orca, pond, berry thrush, dead husband. It brings me joy to build an object made from ink and paper, made of nothing but the same old words, an object as necessary and well put together one tries as a wooden chair. Poetry doesn't erase grief, and it doesn't make the dead return. But the silence the words break through and then go back to is like the seeds of a cottonwood tree lighting on the pages of an open book, lighting on the hairs of the gardener's forearm, on the brown fur of a rabbit, the cat has his eye on, that tense, muzzled hush, not even a whisker of sound from prey or predator, just a fluff of seed drifting through the air, touching the tip of the long, twitching ear, settling momentarily there. Thank you for listening.